Alright, so let's get started. So what we have right now with our RESTful tasks is we've got one component, right? We've got this app component, everything, it has everything in it. It's got all of our tasks. It allows us to create a new task. But the one thing that's been missing from this is that we can't really do any routing inside Angular, so we're not able to move from page to page. We just have one route and that's it. So let's change that. So when you guys create your projects, it's always asking you if you want to create it with routing, and usually we're saying yes, even though we haven't been using it yet. Now we're going to see how to actually use it. So inside of our public, our app component.html, if I can find that here, you can see down at the bottom of that, it has this thing called a router outlet. And what that is that's going to render all of our whatever selected route that we're on, or whatever active route that we're on. Okay? So what I wanted to do is kind of break out this application a little bit so that we don't have everything on one page. We'll have some different routes. So what I'm thinking we'll do is we'll create another route where we can grab a specific task, and then we'll have one route where we just show all tasks. Okay? And that will be so that we can kind of get a basic foundation in how routing works. So let's look at, there's this routing module here, the app-routing module, and you can see that right now it doesn't currently have any routes in it. So that's why we have everything on a single page. We want to change that, right? So in order to add routing, what we're going to want to do is create some extra components that we can use as page components. So let's go to our CLI to do that. And I'm already here inside my public folder. So let's create a, whoa, why do I already have a show task? Oh, that was just a subcomponent. So let's create a, we'll call it like a single task component or something like that, right? That's where we will be able to just go to get one task and then display it on the page. So I'm going to go ng-g-c, so generate a component, and we'll call it single task. And that'll create that for me. And then I also want to create an all tasks component. So ng-g-c all tasks. Okay. So now we have those two things. Now inside of our app routing module, we can start to actually use these guys. So for each route that you want to create, you're going to create an object by opening up your curly braces. And then we want to specify a couple things. We want to specify what the path to that route is, and then we also want to specify what component is going to be rendered at that route. Okay? So let's say the path for this first one is going to be, let's just say it's an ID, so that will be the ID of a task. All right? And then the component that we want to render is going to be the single task component. So if I say single task component, whoa, look at that. Do you notice how it filled it in for me up there? So we do need to import it, but if you click tab, it should auto import it for you, which is quite nice. And then here, if I want my index route to just show all the tasks, let's do this. Let's say, so an empty path, and then I think we have to say path match is full. That's because our path is empty. And then for that component, we want to do all tasks component. Okay. So for now, let's just check out the app and see if we're able to see this like we're expecting. Okay, so notice down here below we're seeing all tasks works, right? So that particular route is okay because I'm on my index route. That's why we're seeing that component. Then here, if I wanted to go to some specific task ID, I'll just put in 5 here. And we're getting a problem. Does anyone know why we're getting a problem here? No, it's not that there's no ID of 5, although that's a fairly good guess.
It's checking the express route.
Yeah, so here, notice that when we get this cannot get /5 here, you can see that's actually an express message. So it's saying express doesn't have a route that actually matches this. So the way that we can fix this is we have to go back to our server.js file. So we have to make one change so that we'll be able to use Angular routing. And if I hard refresh a page, or if I go directly to a page without clicking on a link or whatever, I don't want to get this. I want to actually get my Angular page. All right. So let's open up our server.js down here. And then we have all this routing that took place right in here on line 8, right? So underneath that, and we're already using this for our static files, what we want to do is create essentially a catch-all route that would grab anything else. So if we've gotten past all of this routing here, what we want to do is just send them back the Angular application. Okay? So this is our catch-all, and we're going to create one of these functions here. We're going to say app.all, and what that means is that for any type of request, whether it be get, post, put, whatever, we're going to do this, and then we're going to specify that that should match an asterisk, which means that no matter what the route is, we're going to hit this automatically. Okay? And then I'll just create one of my little recres functions, and actually we don't really even need the request at all. All I want to do is I want to send back my index.html from my Angular project. So I can just say res.sendFile, starting from the dir name that we're in now, and then I'm going to add to that public. And then if you guys notice up here, we have the public, and then inside the dist, we have another public folder, and then of course there's that index.html. So that's what I want to send back. So let's go public dist public index.html. Okay, and we've got NodeMon refreshing for us. So if we do that again, here we've got, it's telling us, okay, single task works. So our routing is at least working, although it looks a little weird right now because, of course, we're still rendering all that main stuff on this. Okay.
So when we do this, all the routes and stuff that we set up in our Express app, are those still getting hit, or that's just everything's bouncing straight back?
Yeah, so in other words here, none of those routes are actually being triggered because remember how I prepended my routes with API? So they're like API/tasks and then potentially something after that if I'm looking for a particular task ID.
Okay.
So all of those routes are getting passed through because they didn't match this. And then at the end, we're able to match our Angular app because we have that app.all at the
But
very
if we
end.
hit one of those routes that are in routing,
Then it would stop there.
Still stop there.
It'll stop there.
Got
Yeah,
it.
exactly. Cool. So basically what we want to do is we want to take some of the stuff out that we have from the main page and drop that in the all-tasks component so that we don't have this situation where we're still rendering everything on the main page, right? So let's see. Let me close up the server. Okay, inside the app component.ts, we had some logic in here, but for now, let's just grab the HTML from it. Okay, so I've got this, I guess we'll leave the form there for now. Do you guys want to create a create new task component as well, or a new route? We could do that as well. Sure, why not? Okay, cool. So let's do that. We'll say nggc new task. Okay, so inside my new task, I really just want to put this form, right? Okay, let's grab that, and then we've got this new task component here, my HTML. Instead of new task works, let's put our form that we had already. Okay, and then what else am I going to need to move into my new task component? So I've got this form, but am I handling it inside new task component? Whoops, that's the spec file. We don't have any form handling inside this component yet, so I'm going to need to move the logic back into that as well so that it will still work. All right, inside our app component.ts, let's see, where was our logic for handle submit? Yeah, let me get rid of this real quick. Oops. I was testing out something with Akshay yesterday. We could actually do this stuff with fetch as well. So we were just playing around with that. I'll comment this out. And then let's just grab this whole handle submit. And then bring that into here. Okay, the other thing that we needed was our model, right, for the actual new task. Let's bring that as well. And then again, we're going to need to inject our HTTP service so that we can create a new task like we were doing. Okay, oops. Let's put that guy up here. All right, and then inside the constructor, let's inject that HTTP service. So private HTTP is just going to be HTTP service. Great, and then it imported it for me. So that should be working. Now we have to add a route for this as well, right? So let's go back to our routing module, which is right here. And then I want to be careful where I put this because notice here that we've got this wildcard situation. Remember how routing was important in Express? We also want to be aware of that here in our Angular app. So I'm going to have a path of new. And also notice that the routing paths are a little bit different than Express because we don't have that / prepending them. They start without a /. So the component that I'm going to render for that is going to be new task component. Good. Okay, let's save that and make sure that still works. So if I go new, you can see down here I'm getting my form, so that's good. That's showing us that it's working. I'm going to open up the console to make sure we didn't get any errors. Nothing yet, right? So we're good. Okay. Now the other thing I want to do is I want to move the all tasks from the main app component. Let's move that into its own component so that our routing will kind of start to make a little more sense, right? Okay, so inside my app component HTML, I was looping through all the tasks. So let's just grab this code here. There. Actually, I think we'll... I don't know if we want to add the selected task or not. Let's just leave that there for now. Okay, so inside my all tasks component, up here, I'm going to drop that in. So instead of all tasks works, let's just put what we have there. And then, do I have reference to all my tasks yet inside here? No, because I just put it inside the template, but we still need to actually retrieve it from my alltasks component.ts, right? So let's bring the logic that we had inside the app component into the alltasks component. Okay, where's my app component.ts? That would be here. Okay, so all we had was we had that empty tasks array, and then we filled it up on init. So let's just grab this logic right here. And then we just get rid of this too. Okay, fair enough. So inside of our alltasks component, let's put that logic. I keep clicking the testing file. Stop me, guys. All right. Inside ng on init, let's just go retrieve all the tasks. And notice how we're getting the red squiggly. Why is that? Because we haven't yet injected the service. So we have to do that every time as well. So here inside the constructor, let's say private HTTP service. Whoops, I meant to hit tab. Okay, cool. So it imported it for me. And then we're getting a red squiggly on this.task because, of course, we haven't set it up here. So we'll say tasks equals an empty array. All right, and that should be enough. So if we go back to the index route, it's still getting all the tasks for us, like we're expecting, right? And then if I go to new, of course, now we're just seeing the form as opposed to all our tasks. So we're starting to sort of separate things out into actual routes. Okay, now what we want to handle is what about the situation where we hit a route where we're trying to view a specific task? So now we need to know, how do we grab the task ID from my URL and then, of course, go and grab that from our backend, right? So let's get to it. Let's get inside the single task component. So inside my TS here, I'm going to import some. Oh my gosh, every time. Why do I keep hitting those spec files? All right.
I always do this. Yeah.
Gosh, it's driving me crazy. All right, so here what we need to do is we need to import some stuff so that we'll be able to tap into those routing parameters. All right. So let's say we're going to import activated route. And then we're also going to import this thing called params. And we're going to take that from Angular/router. Okay. Now if I'm going to use this activated route, I also need to do what with it? I need to inject it. Yeah. So let's inject that in the constructor. So let's say private route, we'll just call it route, is going to be an instance of an activated route. There we go. Okay, and then inside the ng on init, let's use this activated route so that we can try to get the routing parameter from it. Okay. So let's say this dot underscore route, and then we're going to say dot params. And then params are something that we can actually subscribe to. So they give us back an observable. So let's subscribe to it. And then what do you think we're going to get back from the params? We're going to get back params themselves, and they are an instance of params, which we brought up there. So we can actually do that instead of saying this is any. We can say it is of type params. So let's say params, oops, of type params. And then for now, all we're going to do is we're just going to console log that params object. Okay, so you guys can see what that looks like. So let's go back here and let's just hit an ID, some ID, we'll just do 4, for instance. Okay, so now we logged this params object, and you can see it's got a property in here called an ID. And then that ID links to the specific ID that we were looking for, right? So now that I have access to this ID, what am I going to do with it? Yeah, exactly. So I'm going to use this to then make a call through my service to my backend to actually retrieve that specific task. Okay? So in order to do that, again, we also need to be using our service. So let's inject that into the constructor as well. That's a lovely sound.
I thought it was like a dying dog.
Yeah. Goodness. Yeah, downstairs. All right, so inside of our service, we don't yet have a method to get one specific task. So let's just make that real quick. And this won't be hard. We'll just say something like get task. And then the get task method is going to take in an ID, the one that we're looking for. And then we're going to return a get request to API/tasks, and then I want to append the ID to my route, right? Okay, so now our service has a means to actually pull one specific task, and then we'll go back in here and actually call this method. So instead of this, let's go this.http.getTask, and then we'll pass it in params.id. So that ID is the specific property of my params object that I can use to get this task. Okay, and then what's this going to give us back? So when we run this method, what are we going to get back from it?
Observable.
Ooh, Alan was the only one who nailed that. Yeah, we're getting back an observable, right? And then the observable we can then subscribe to. That would, presumably give us back a task. All right, so we always have to subscribe. And we're going to get some data back. And then what I'm going to do, because I think I'm going to get back a task, I'm going to set just basically an empty task up here. And then when we get it back from our observable, let's just replace it with the task that we got from our backend, right? So let's come up here, and we'll say task equals null. All right? So if I get back my task, I'm going to say this.task equals data.task. Okay, does this part kind of make sense with everyone so far? What we're doing mostly? Okay, cool. So let's let's do something on our single task component. We basically just want to render out this individual task to show that we were able to pull it correctly, right? So instead of single task works, let's do. So this will be task.title. Actually, let's put this in an h1 tag or something like that, right? Wow. And then description. Okay, so the description is there, and then we'll just put down here, I'll just put completed, and then we'll do task.completed. Okay, cool. But I'm going to make one small change to this, and this is something that's been tripping up a lot of people. I've been seeing a lot of errors. Basically what's happening is when we have this in the template, what if my task is null? I'm trying to call this title attribute on it.
Doesn't load at all.
Title of undefined.
Yeah, exactly. So, well, in my case it's null because I set it to null in the beginning. But if you guys didn't set it to anything, then of course it would be undefined. So either way, if we're trying to read an attribute of something that is either undefined or null, you're going to run into some kind of an error. Okay, and you guys will see if you have your browser's console open, you're going to see a lot of red in there. Your page may go blank or something like that. So the way that I'm going to handle that is I'm just going to use one of those little ngIf conditions. So let's wrap this in a div. And then in here, let's only render all this stuff on the inside if we actually have a task right now, okay? And that's how we'll prevent that problem. So we'll say ngIf, and then I'll just say task does not equal null.
What if descriptions were blank though?
Well, yeah, I mean, I could make that an ngIf as well. So right now, since it's blank, or if it's blank, we'll just have like an empty p tag. So yeah, so we can make that conditional if you like. That's kind of a cool. Yeah, I mean it's a cool little addition, but yeah, that's how you could do it. You could do another ngIf in here. So if task.description. Okay, cool. So we've got everything we need there, and we're now pulling the tasks. Let's try to render an individual one. I don't think I have 4 tasks, so I'm going to start with a lower ID. Let's start at like 2. Okay, this cool app.
The Mongo ID?
Wait, hold on one second. Yeah, you're absolutely right. They're not. I don't know why I was thinking sequential like that. All right.
MySQL.
Let's go. Yeah, let's just go back to the. Well, here's what was happening with the 4. All we were doing is we were just console logging what that ID was. So we weren't actually pulling a task with it. But instead of that, let's just go back to our main all tasks page, and then I'll grab an ID that would actually work. So here, if we look at our network requests, or actually our console should tell us. So here are all the tasks. Let's just grab an ID from this for now. Okay. So that, and then we'll go up here. That. Okay, get rid of this. Are we not getting back a task?
Do you have a controller that like takes one task?
Didn't we,
No, we don't have.
really? That's a good question, because I thought we created that, but we have get by ID, right?
Oh, we have.
And then let me double check that that was the right route. So that should be this route right here, right? Get by ID. So did we actually make a request though? Let's see. Huh.
So just return to null task.
Yeah. Why did it do that?
Did you ever change that?
What's that?
Oh, no, that
In the tasks controller, let me double check here. So we did get by ID. Ooh, gosh, I made a terrible error. Look at that.
Oh,
Jesus. Woo. Okay, so yeah, the pitfalls of that underscore ID, right? So we called it in our parameters. Did I underscore that ID to that was like to show you guys something the other day, right?
you never changed it back.
Oh my gosh. Okay, all right. So that was our problem, right? We were trying to call this rec.params.underscore ID, which did not exist. So it was undefined. Okay, let's try this again. Cool. So we're actually getting our task. So that's nice. We still have the new route, and we have our all tasks route. We could also create a catch-all route. Hang on a second. Let's just go to the routing as well. So if I wanted to have something that was like a not found route, I could create something that comes after all of my other routes. So I could say something like, oops, path, oops. And then what this is going to look like is a double asterisk. So that means it'll match anything. And then we haven't created a component for this, but let's just create, whoops, I think I had another terminal that can do it. Let's just create a page not found component. So we'll say nggc page not found. Okay. And then we'll just say page not found component. There we go. So if I go up here and I enter in some route that's not going to work, let's say some bad route. Did I spell completed wrong?
Oh yeah, that was perfect.
Jesus.
I was staring at that. I was like, "Is he gonna notice?"
All right, so notice how we're actually matching a route on this. This wasn't really a great example, but let me change the route. So what happened was we got right there, right?
Right.
Okay. So instead, let me change the route a little bit. Another path. Okay, so now we're actually getting page not found works because we landed at that. We passed through all the other routes and nothing worked, right? That's the catch-all on our front end in our Angular application. Yeah, the other catch-all, of course, was in our Express app where we had the app.all. Remember that? Yeah. Okay. So the final thing that we want to cover today is the actual linking portion. So now we know that we're generating these different pages, but how do we easily link between them, right? So let's create some links. So at the top of my app component, I just want to put a link that will take me to all tasks. Where's my app component? So here's the HTML. I've got my title up here. Let's just create a tag, and then we'll say all tasks. Anyone know? I know some of you have done routing already. What does this look like if we're gonna route to a specific page? Banana in a box. I'm just gonna do it like this because actually it's not really being bound to anything. I'm just hard coding that I want to go back to the index. Okay, so when you want to go to a specific location, we're going to use this attribute called router link, and then it's going to tell it where do we want that to go. All right. So let's try this out real quick. If I want to go to that ID, shoot, I don't remember what it was. Let's go to new first. Okay, and then we have this link here. Let's see if it works. Works, right?
Does that mean high ref would also work?
href
Yeah.
will. Oh, I see what you're asking. So let's look at the link itself, just so you guys can see what that actually renders. There actually is an href link in there. Can you see it over there?
Yeah.
So Angular is putting that in on our behalf. So in other words, if somebody, well, let's say a search engine came in and was looking at this page and it saw, okay, this is the href, that's what it links to. Because search engines want to know where is this link pointing to. So without that href, it wouldn't know where it's pointing to. But the JavaScript is doing something a little bit different. So instead of when we hit that link, we're not doing a hard page refresh like we have been in the past. It's just going to that different route in our application. So it's a much faster process. So if we look at the network requests here, let me go back to the new route real quick. Actually, let's create a new link as well, right? So let's go whoops. Get rid of the href, and that will be inserted automatically by Angular. And this will just be /new, create new task. Okay, so if I click that, let's see what happens with the network request. And I'm trying to make this big enough so you guys can see it. I'm going to shrink this a little. Oh, jeez, not that. Darn it. Okay, so let's see what happens. I'm going to refresh this. Let's see what happens with the network requests when I click one of these links. So if I go new task, were any requests made down here? No, because the new task route doesn't actually have to go retrieve any data. All tasks does though, so if I click on all tasks, I would expect to see a call down here to my API, right? So let's click that. You see how it made that call again? Because we just went back to the all tasks route. Okay, the other case is where you want to route to something that maybe has something variable in it, like an ID or something like that. You guys want to do that inside the all tasks component? So here before we had a button that would basically show a task down below. Instead of this button, maybe let's just create a little anchor tag that will route us to that single task, right? That'd be kind of nice. So let's change this to A. And then again, we want to use router link, but this time we need to use binding, right? And then the syntax for this is kind of strange. But we're going to use an array, and then we're just going to separate out the different parts of the path. Because it's not hard-coded. Because we're not going to like hard-code an ID in here. The ID is going to be calculated by that specific task, right? Okay, so the first part of the path is actually just going to be the task ID, right? So we can just say task._ID, and then we'll say view here. So let's refresh all of our apps here. Okay, and then let's click on this guy. So there we go, and if we go back to all tasks here, whoops, I went to create new. Okay. Yeah, so here's kind of the flow of the information. When I click on one of these links, it's taking me to that other route. And then when we get to that other route, remember what we had inside ng on init? At that point, we were making the request to go and get the individual task from the server. And then once it's there, of course, we render it because we have that ngIf. We're only showing it once we have an actual task. Okay. So that's how we can do that. The other thing you guys probably want to know about is how can we navigate programmatically. So what if I've just created a new task and I want to go back to my all tasks component? We want to know how to do that, right? So let's do it. So let's go inside of our new task component, and then the TS file here. Why am I getting red on that? Oh, because of this right here. Okay, so we were trying to push into this.task, but of course it didn't exist since we moved this stuff out of there. Okay. So once we've created that new task, let's just route the person back to the all tasks route, right? So we want to import router from Angular router. Okay? And then instead of pushing that task like we were doing before, let's just have them leave. So we have to inject this into the constructor again so that we can use it. So say private, router is going to be an instance of router. And then once this happens, we're going to say this._router .navigate. And then you can see, notice what it's asking for. It's asking for an array
Okay.
Okay, so we can split up the paths in the same way that we were doing inside the view. I'm just going to have one path segment because I'm just going to route them back to the index. Okay. All right, so let's go back real quick and we can create a new task and then we'll expect to be routed back to the alltasks component. All right, so new task, some disk, say it's completed this time, submit. Did we get an error here? Push of undefined? Yeah, I sure did. That's what I was wondering too. It's like, wait, there's no pushing happening here, right? Yeah, maybe it failed at building, so let me check to see what happened here. Huh. It seems like it built after that point, but maybe I was looking at a stale version of the app. So let me just restart it real quick. Let's go in here. It's not built yet. Oh, you're right. Okay, cool. Now we're built. Let's try this again. Okay, so our new task got added, but let's add another one too. Final task. This is it. All right, completed. Okay, so we were able to navigate right back to the all tasks route after we created it, and you can see there it is at the bottom. Migrations?
Yeah, that's what build feels like.
Oh,
Make migrations.
yeah. Yeah, that build took a little while actually. So I don't know. Any questions on what we've covered so far?
I understand how you wanted to make another query when you type in slash like the ID. But then what if we're clicking the view and then go to see that task? Wouldn't it be like kind of less efficient? Or like, can we just grab the task object from this component and then send it to the single task component instead of making another query to the server?
Yeah, you'd have to structure it a little bit differently. So you would basically have to have your show component be a nested sort of component. But then I'm trying to think how that would work with routing. That's a tricky one.
I tried to inject this component to another component because isn't like your service just another component? And then
Yeah, I mean, if you had like a further nesting of your routes, that could potentially work. But what I'm trying to think of is how would you then pass down the task to the subcomponent? Because you'd have to pass it down somehow, right?
So are you saying that components that are in the same layer cannot pass data between each other?
Not in the ways that we've been working, but there are some other things that you could use. There's something called a behavior subject that could potentially allow you to pass data from one sibling to another. Or if you use something like Redux, like a global state management solution, you could do it that way.
You don't want to do that.
What's that?
You don't want to do that in practice. There's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, I mean, for what we're working on here, I don't want you to get worried about, oh, this is so inefficient that, I mean, we're making one request for one task.
Don't we still need like route.js in the server farm? We're just building route and route again, right?
Yeah. That's what makes this kind of tricky and laborious, is that we're building a complete application on both the back side and the front side.
So I'm like coders so it's just really easy.
Yeah. Well, I mean, just witness what Josh did. He created a whole script to basically bootstrap an Angular app for nothing. So that's kind of a cool example of someone who's feeling lazy, like, oh, I keep doing this time and time again. How can I just find a solution that will do it for me, do the work for me?
Can we not? But
Because our data is actually in object format, is it
Mhm.
possible to squeeze that into parameters? Then, because we can pass parameters between our components, right?
I'm gonna squeeze it into parameters, and then have a route that had like title / description. Oh god,
Kinda like
that
what
seems
we're
like a
doing.
really ugly solution.
Okay.
I mean, I see what you're thinking there,
is
but
there any chance like you can link this Angular routes to it to Express and not have a route, just work through it, or we still need a route?
could you rephrase that
Like,
question?
is there any way like we can link all this Angular routes to the Express, like the server.js, and then not have like other routes, that separate routes that we created in Express?
No, because we need our Angular app to have routing in it. We want it to have that fast kind of routing. When you hit something, boom, you're there. We don't want it. Don't want it to be that kind of slow routing where we do a hard page refresh every time. I think there was another question over here somewhere. Yes.
To keep it restful
Mhm.
and to not repeat, that's why we should probably use API before we, like in the Express app.
Yeah, and that question comes up too
Doubles
a lot. Is like, well, where should I start? Should I start on the front end or the back end? I'd say get that back end nice and ready to go. You can test it out in Postman, and then once it's fully fleshed out and ready, then go ahead and build the front end. Because with testing in Postman, it's pretty simple to make sure that everything's working the way you want it. Because then it's just a matter of getting your Angular app up and running, right? And that's not so bad.
Is there any way to bypass the, say we are using Angular on a Django
You're like
project?
Mr. Loophole.
Huh?
No, I'm kidding. Go ahead.
Yeah, what if we're using Angular on a Django project? And
Okay.
because Django project use like the weird CSRF token,
Mm.
how do we?
Well, but you're not going to make standard form submissions. You're still going to be sending back JSON to your server.
Oh,
So it won't be the same type of form submission that you're used to where you're doing like request.post.
Small question. When you're adding like attributes to the export class,
To the which class?
when you're like exporting classes for your CSS here and there,
Okay, so like,
it's like right there,
uh-huh,
in the constructor.
right.
What's with the underscores like in front of these variables, and why are they private? Like what is it important?
Well, so the reason why these are private is because we don't really want them to be accessible outside the class. And so the underscore is basically just a convention saying that they are private. But no, it's not critical. You could write that without the underscore and it would still work just the same.
But it's just convention.
Is there a way by which we can check which components loaded in the first serve or video?
Possibly. I don't know of one. I guess you could do some console logging in the ng on init. What's your use case for that though? Like just so you can make sure that the correct route was being loaded?
Like if a certain component is open, maybe a button can hide the all pass button.
Not necessarily like it's not like what it's something out of what we are doing now. So which button relates to lazy loading. So what if I want to check if my components are getting lazy loaded or if they are loaded all at the
Oh, okay.
initialization?
Okay. I don't know the answer to that off the top of my head, but I'll try to look into it for you. Anything else before I stop the video?
I just have a question about the error route.
Oh yeah, the catch-all at the bottom?
Yeah,
Okay.
because technically it didn't get triggered when you put in like a route that wasn't recognized.
Yeah, exactly. That didn't exactly work the way that I wanted it to. And the reason why is because, wait, where's my routing? Hang on one second.
Is that ID
The reason why, yeah, we actually triggered this ID route Because it's a wild card, yeah. So catch anything that just has something after the first forward slash.
Okay, but like in practice, once you, if someone entered an ID that didn't exist in the database, shouldn't that be cleared out?
Yeah, so we could have extra logic inside there. If we got back, so for instance, let's try to do that real quick if you guys want. So if I'm here inside my, dang it, I opened that again. All right, so if I'm inside here and I try to get a task, but my task was null. So let's just say if data.task equals null, we want to do some kind of a redirect, right? Maybe redirect what back to the all tasks page. Where do you guys want to go back to? All tasks. Okay, so let's just inject the router because we didn't have it yet. We'll go private. Oops. HTTP. Whoa, why am I saying that? Router, which is an instance of router. So here, if the task was null, let's just return this dot router dot navigate, and then again we'll just navigate to /, which should give us all the tasks, right? What's that? Okay. Yeah. Yep. Mm-hmm. Because you can separate out the different path segments as items in the array if you want. So just for an example, if I wanted to route to say tasks, and then I wanted it to be like some task ID, which I could attach to that. I don't know. I don't have an ID here, but you kind of get the picture here is that I can separate out my route segments into different paths if I want.
Instead of just adding it all into
Yeah, I would tend to just add them into one string. So I mean, I'm with you in terms of like what you're thinking, but you can separate them out. So
data.task. Isn't data a task?
it depends on how you wrote your backend. So if you wrote it to just return the task like that, then yeah, it already would be. In my case, I had a sub property called task that was the task. So that way inside my object I could also have an error field or an error property.
The properties are task and error.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so let's just try this. Let's enter in a bad ID that we know is not going to work. So if I go a task ID of 4 or something like that. Why did I not get navigated? Whoa.
I hate this error.
Was my data.task not null though? Wasn't it? Wait, hold on one second. Yeah, let's just see what came back. Oh, so I got an error message actually. So maybe we'll I'll just say so if data.task was null or data.hasOwnProperty error, meaning that there was a Mongo error because I gave it a bad ID, then I should redirect, right? So there we go. We actually got redirected back to the all tasks page as expected. No, actually it wasn't. There was no data.task period because if you check in my task controller, so if I do get by ID, all I was sending back in my error was just the error itself. I didn't actually send a task. So task wasn't null, it was actually undefined. Yeah. Cool. We good, guys?